Let's have some fun. We might as well. If you've ever read George Adamski's book, Inside a Flying Saucer, this is another one of his books, The Flying Saucers Have Landed, with a particularly nice UFO flying saucer. And then if we look at the book, Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, we find here the interesting point about travelling faster than light through time travel. As he says here in the book, page 117, The Voyage, he says, let me see. The only explanation for this is time travel. As we know from the work of Albert Einstein and Hermann Minkowski, time is the fourth dimensional space. So, as I've said in a previous video, a three-dimensional object can only move through a four-dimensional space, just like a 2D object cannot move unless it's moving through a three-dimensional space. And of course, that fourth-dimensional space is actually time, but it's also a space. In other words, it's got an X, Y, and a Z coordinate. Just like a five-dimensional space, I'll have an X, Y, Z, and A space. A fourth-dimensional object can only move through a five-dimensional space. And that space is also time. In other words, the time space. So we must speak, getting back to the book, of the space-time continuum. The time dimension is sometimes referred to as the time domain. The Ebens have obviously developed the technology to travel in the time domain through these wormholes, which are actually embedded inside the magnetic field, as people who studied time slips and various other bits of information from the ETs know that that inside the magnetic field there's a V-shaped time field, which these people call wormholes. So it mentions in the book travel through a transversible wormhole is really travel through time, and it's faster than the speed of light because it depends on the frequency. And that's what Fopp said when he time travelled through the Earth's time field, basically. And also, we know what the equation is for that. And so he wrote in his diary, the commander from the US who was travelling with the Ebens, he says, "We will all feel better once the craft gets out of this time wave," as he calls it. The alien said we're travelling through the time wave. See, so it's actually not a wormhole, even though it could be called a wormhole. It's actually a time wave, depends on the frequency. So it's quite interesting. And then we move on to some of the other mechanisms that are very interesting, such as the Swaruvian drone, which is basically, if we move it over a bit, so you've got a small nuclear reactor as the power supply in the centre. Then you've got the red mercury and the counter-rotating turbines. Now it's It's interesting, but it's well known from alchemy that Robert Koch's book on the elixir of immortality, that if you mix bismuth with mercury and heat it up, which is what would happen if you started using counter-rotating turbine housing, that the mercury would turn green. So it's quite possible that this red mercury is mercury and some other element, and once it starts to rotate, it does in fact turn red. It probably turns, it could turn green, but we don't know what other, we don't know the exact composition. But then after that, you've got the artificial intelligence housing, also the electronics and subsystems. Then you've got the sensors, and then you've got the outer hull. So this actually makes perfect sense as a model for a drone, a spherical drone. Because what happens when you rotate mercury, heat it up, it floats, it rises, it creates some kind of field. But this is all advanced physics and chemistry. Needs more research. Like everything else, we should be at the other side of the universe by now. But we're not. We're stuck on this planet because somebody don't want us to get off. We prefer rockets. You know. But, you know, it's like, oh, else. If you're not that intelligent and you don't want to get off this planet, fair enough. You can just stroke your cats and dogs and take them for walks and enjoy this planet. No worries. But don't pretend that you're scientists and you're mathematicians. You're more like dog walkers and cat strokers than scientists and mathematicians. Anyway, very interesting. Read the books. The Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. I rode a flying saucer. Inside the flying saucers, there's New World, Alien Order. There's all these great books that you can read on an evening to pass, you know, an hour a day. You'll get through the books in no time. Very interesting, fascinating subject. Till next time, don't have nightmares. Hey.